Hi, this is Lori Failer, and this is my homework for Paul McWhorter's Pico W course, lesson number 26. In this lesson, Paul showed us how he drew a circle on our SSD 1306 display, and he challenged us to make what he called the rotating potato chip. With some looking around, that's a Lissajous curve that he wants us to put onto our display and have the curve kind of rotate around. And so this involved some learning about those kind of curves and how their functional form is, and then how to get them on the 1306. So I did my research on Wikipedia, and I clipped out a few pieces of key information that I found in that article. It's a lot of details, and you can look in a lot of other places to learn about Lissajous curves. But the key thing for me was I knew I needed to understand what functional form I was actually graphing on our display, and the Wikipedia article does give you the X and Y pairs that you need to create these curves. And they follow these equations here. And then I guess the next key thing to learn or figure out is, well, the thing that Paul had going was rotating. And so you don't have just a fixed, like you can see here, this is, you put in different parameters here and you can see, yeah, okay, that looks like part of that potato chip, but it's not moving. And that's because, the delta is fixed on this graph, and you're not getting various different deltas. And it was this graph that kind of made it clear to me that the delta was what I needed to kind of rotate through to make the figure look like it was rotating, because you can kind of see with different deltas you get the different shapes. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's how he's doing it. He's rotating this delta through the angles of a circle, basically 0 to 360, and then that makes it rotate. So it was that little bit of playing around and kind of seeing this this table here that kind of gave me the clue that that's probably what I needed to do to make this make the potato chip rotate. So once you get that part of it, I think it's relatively straightforward to go ahead and graph these curves. So we'll import everything that we've imported before to do the circle, set up the bus and the OLED display, and then I put a bunch of notes in here just so I would remember all this. So one, what are the functional forms, and what are these variables, and I played around with it enough to figure out what they control, because that's also important. You got to kind of get these parameters of these curves set to values that are going to display here well. And so you want to, the magnitude of the curves in the X direction and Y direction are important. And so you can play around with this, but I kind of settled on A is 40 and B is 20 to do I think the potato chip. And you can play around with this, so it's a lot of fun. Then the A to B ratio, reading the article, it said to get a closed curve, to get that closed curve that we see, you have to keep these in whole numbers. And so you want to keep them in a ratio to each other, 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 2 to 3, things like that. And then also, if you switch which one's the larger of the two, then you can take your potato chip and rotate it. If you make the B larger and if you make the A larger, it's the other way. So that's kind of fun to play with as well. And then, the two things that you need to cycle through are the T, because the T is what's going to, make it go around, and then the delta is what's going to make it seem like it's moving. So I'll rotate through the deltas and then rotate through the T's. So for each delta, you'll get one kind of graph, and then you'll go to the next delta and the next delta and the next delta and the next, and it's going to look like it rotates. And just like we did for the circle, I'm adding 64 and 32 onto those equations that I showed on the Wikipedia article to center this in the display, and then putting the pixels, turning them on. Once it does one whole set, then it'll show those. Then I'll clear the screen, and we'll come back around for the next delta, so that'll kind of give a smooth transition. So the code itself, I've got a ton of comments in here, so the code itself is really pretty short. I think as Paul was hinting to us that this wasn't as hard as maybe it seemed. And I think, like I said, the key thing was knowing what the functional form was, but then also understanding, what do these parameters control and how do you make it the right size for the screen and so forth. So just a lot of trial and error on my part. Okay, well, let's go ahead and run it. It's exciting, I guess. So I'll go ahead and run it. For some reason, my iPhone tends to have flash unless I put my hand here. So now you can see my potato chip going around. Yeah, I think it's a good looking potato chip. All right, we'll go ahead and stop that. And let's invert it so that the potato chip goes the other way. So switching the A and B, which one's the larger of the two? And now you can see the potato chip goes the other way. All right. And let's see. You can make it more complicated by, changing these numbers up. So maybe we'll make this a 2 and this a 3, and you'll get a different looking one. So let's run that one. So again, you can see. This is pretty fun. Kind of looks like a crown, maybe. Every now and then it looks like a fish going in one direction or the other. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and I can see why Paul enjoys playing with graphing these, because you can do a lot of different things. I'll just stop and say, I was finding the speed is kind of controlled by how much of this math you're doing. And I was thinking that if you really needed to do this fast, you'd probably create little bitmaps byte arrays that you already had pre-made, and then you'd flash them up on the screen if you really wanted it to go quickly. And I also didn't do every last delta. I went by 5s, and in the T's I went by 1. And you can make it go faster if you, don't do this by 1s, but maybe do this by 2s or 5s. And of course you don't get quite as nice a line when you do that, but you can make it rotate a little bit faster that way. Well, that's my homework, and it was a fun challenge, Paul. I now know more about Lissajous curves than I ever did in my entire life up to this point. I think it was time well spent, but it's 5 or 6 hours that I'll never get back. Well, anyways, thanks for the homework, and thank you for watching.